Well, these are one of the latest offerings from Rapala. These are the Shadow Rap Shads. The Shadow Rap was released about 3 years ago, and they've come out in the last 12 months with one of these shad shapes, and they're really, really effective. I'm going to talk to you about how I like to use them. And they're great on a range of species. They've got such a realistic profile to them that they're going to catch Barra, Mangrove, Jack, Flathead, Trevally. They look a lot like a baby whiting, or even just like, I'll show you the other one I've got, resembles a herring. Just a beautiful resemblance of a little herring. And I'll use that around bridges where you get those schools of bait like herring that are shooting around the pylons and things like that, even up high with that shallow bib there. My favourite one is this deeper one, and it gets down a little bit further, and it's got a little bit more of a subtle retrieve to it. Like the cadence it throws out is really high, but it doesn't have that thumping feel to it. You can tell by the shape of that bib. But where I'll use this is generally when it's early light conditions or late afternoon, when you don't need to get down as deep, or along shallow banks. So you can see here I've got like a rock bar and then some sand and then another rock bar, and it's a lot shallower than what you'd generally be fishing around for, say, a mangrove jack or an estuary cod in a deep descending rock bar. These things are great where it just shallows out a little bit and you've got more bait that's moving around in those shallows. So I'll show you how I like to use it. I'll cast in nice and close to the bank, and then the first few retrieves can be a lot longer of a draw because it looks like a fish is starting to forage along those shallow edges. And as you get out further, you can start to get really twitchy with it. And the beauty of these Rapala Shadow Rap Shads is that they've got a kind of fade to it. When you stop it, they'll tend to, these ones will rise up. I've upgraded the treble on the front here, which just gives it a really balanced suspension. You can see that, that's a 3 times strong saltwater gauge hook, and that gives it a perfect suspension. I've left the one on the back there as standard, otherwise it tends to want to do this and sink down a little bit. So just the front I've upgraded for mangrove jack that usually go for a headshot anyway, but that gives it a perfect fade and suspend just like that, and it'll kind of wobble and just find its own little spot there in suspension, which is really tempting to a mangrove jack. So like I said, fishing around these shallower banks where you can see from the descending bank there that it's going to be a little bit shallower further out, these are really effective. They've got a bit smaller of a profile on them, so you're going to be using them a little bit earlier season, or if the bite's not as hot, just trying to match whatever's around. So at the moment there's a lot of herring around, and I've seen some little whiting in along the shallows there. This will be perfect. That's the Rapala Shadow Rap Shad. Even along spots like you've got here, like these slow descending boat ramps and things, they're just perfect. A lot of the time bream and flathead, mangrove jack will sit on the edge or at the undercut end of these things, and so a little shadow rap shad that's thrown down and brought along that eroded underside at the end, perfect. Again, that pause because of their suspension is just great. It's the way you want to work these things. Yes, there you go. So you might have been able to see that there was just a really shallow bank there, and there was bait all over the top of it as I was bringing it out and retrieving it. There was little showering bait everywhere. This thing was searching across the top of the rocks. This little floodie couldn't resist it. He's probably about 400. I'll get him straight back in the water because he's not what I'm actually after this afternoon. As great as it is to get a floodie. Yep. So that's what I mean about fishing even flathead along some of these banks where you're thinking you might be getting mangrove jack on the rocks or an estuary cod, sometimes fishing along these flats where it changes from rocks to sand can be really effective on a whole range of species. So that little fella just grabbed at the moment. I actually saw it, it was about 2 feet down.